The following recording was created by the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast at Florida State University. Information and materials for this recording are supported by the Institute of Education Sciences, National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance, Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast at Florida State University. Contract ED-IES-17-C-0011 as resources and examples for the listener's convenience. Their inclusion is not intended as an endorsement by the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast or its funding source, the Institute of Education Sciences. In addition, the activities and instructional model discussed in this recording are not intended to mandate, direct, or control a state's local educational agencies or schools' specific instructional content, academic achievement system and assessments, curriculum, or program of instruction. State and local programs may use any instructional content, achievement system and assessments, curriculum, or program of instruction they wish.
Welcome to the discussion on assessing college readiness for underserved students in post-secondary settings. This audio file informs higher education practitioners about the role of self-assessment in helping educators reflect on and benchmark current practices against evidence-based norms and best practices to improve institutional effectiveness and increase student outcomes in post-secondary settings. While the examples shared here are centered on self-assessment to enhance institutional effectiveness in post-secondary settings, the notion of using self-assessment tools to support implementation and to enhance effectiveness applies in any educational setting and spans both K-12 and higher education. I'm Nathan Archer, the Regional Educational Laboratory Southeast Multimedia Specialist. This discussion will consist of a question and answer format featuring Dr. Latera Osborne-Lampkin, who will answer questions about the value of self-assessment tools to support continuous improvement in post-secondary institutions. Dr. Lampkin is an education policy research scientist whose research spans both K-12 and higher education. She examines local implementation and decision-making around policy initiatives and reform efforts designed to increase the educational outcomes for traditionally underserved student populations, students in low-performing schools, and at minority-serving institutions. She has extensive experience coordinating, managing, and conducting multi-year interdisciplinary research projects with an array of educational stakeholders, as well as providing technical training to K-12 and higher education practitioners, administrators, and policymakers. She is a principal investigator on multiple training, coaching, and technical support projects, and serves as the manager of the Post-Secondary Success at Historically Black Colleges and Universities, or HBCUs, partnerships for the REL Southeast at Florida State University. She has had an array of professional experiences in the university, private and public sectors, helping practitioners, researchers, and policymakers alike leverage policies, research, and evidence-based practices to enhance effectiveness and to improve student outcomes. Among these experiences is serving as a research associate with the National Center on Scaling Up Effective Schools, assistant professor at the University of North Florida, and a public administrator for the state of Florida. Dr. Lampkin, thank you for answering questions about self-assessment tools and coaching on tool development for college readiness for underserved students. The REL Southeast has provided technical support and training for several state and local educational agencies, as well as other educational entities, to increase the awareness and implementation of evidence-based practices to inform the planning, development, and implementation of policy and program initiatives. Can you tell us about self-assessment in this context, specifically post-secondary settings?
Yes. Assessment is an effective mechanism that, when leveraged in the true spirit of continuous improvement, can provide key insights into what educational entities are doing to enhance and support student learning and development. In this context, the self-assessment process is designed to help educators such as teachers, faculty members, staff, departments, and administrators reflect on current practices, strengths, and challenges in planning for and implementing initiatives. Educators can use the information learned to prioritize their needs as they develop or refine their implementation plan for program initiatives. The process is also helpful in creating systemic changes to increase organizational effectiveness.
What tools can be used to help self-assessments?
Assessments should be facilitated by using a structured tool. Although it is possible for educators to simply identify and assess what they're doing or key components of quality without a structured tool, researchers in the field suggest that this may result in important practices being omitted, inappropriate items included, or too much emphasis being given to particular items, particularly if guided by individual subjective opinions. Here, we will use the term self-assessment tool to refer to any tool designed to target one or more aspects of a law, policy, program, and/or practice of interest. Self-assessment tools can take various forms and use a variety of different approaches. For example, checklists, domain-based approaches, rubrics, or scoring sheets. Essentially, the tool should be designed to promote reflection about current strengths and challenges in planning or implementation, spark conversations among administrators, faculty, and staff, and identify areas for improvement. It is also useful to incorporate a timeline and identify responsible parties to address identified issues. The tool should also be grounded in research and best practices, with information to help individuals draw connections between activities and intended outcomes. For example, increased student achievement.
Your work with the REL Southeast has afforded you the opportunity to work with post-secondary institutions. Can you briefly explain the role self-assessment has in post-secondary settings?
Yes, researchers remind us that in post-secondary settings, it is important to consider how all service and activities, ranging from the business office to campus security, are intentionally designed to facilitate students' progressive advancement towards college completion and positive post-college outcomes. This focus on graduation and subsequent employment in the graduate's field of study is critical. However, there is a range of outcomes that must be addressed along the way. For example, institutions must pay close attention to retention, course completion, and program completion. Using valid and reliable self-diagnostic tools to identify supports that will help meet student needs as soon as possible can be helpful to support matriculation through degree completion.
Dr. Lampkin, you've also had the opportunity to work with HBCUs. Can you please share the nature of your work with them and how this work led to the development of an assessment tool to assess their readiness to support underserved students?
Yes, I certainly can share information about the REL Southeast partnerships with HBCUs and the impetus for the institutional readiness tool for underserved students. Aligned with the White House initiative to promote excellence and innovation at HBCUs, the REL Southeast has partnered with multiple HBCUs across the region. The REL Southeast has established partnerships with Florida A&M University and 6 institutions in Mississippi: Alcorn State University, Tougaloo College, Mississippi Valley State, Jackson State, Hines Community College, Utica Campus, and Rust College. HBCUs have a historical mission and demonstrated commitment to serving students from underrepresented groups and underserved populations, including underrepresented racial ethnic students, traditionally underprepared students, and those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Collectively, our partnering institutions have a total enrollment of over 36,000 students. The REL Southeast Post-Secondary Success at HBCU's partnerships focus on enhancing the awareness and use of research-based knowledge and strategies to improve student retention, matriculation, and outcomes such as graduation rates for students attending our partner institutions. Our work, determined in partnership with the institutional partners, is facilitated through a series of trainings, coaching sessions, and technical support activities, bringing together institutional partners within and across states to increase the use of research and to increase institutional effectiveness and student outcomes at HBCUs. The partnerships produce rigorous, relevant research and resources to inform institutional initiatives and to increase student outcomes. Alcorn State University co-hosts the National Institutes for Historical Underserved Students, also known as the Institutes, currently located at the University of West Virginia, Parkersburg. The purpose of the institutes is to research and identify common barriers to educational equity and success for all historically underserved students, to develop and disseminate research-based solutions to these barriers, and to recruit, retain, and graduate more of those students who are currently being overlooked or failed by American higher education. Alcorn emphasized the need for thought partners as they, in collaboration with the institutes, work to develop a self-diagnostic tool to assess institutional readiness for underserved student populations. The tool will help them, and hopefully institutions across the country, to assess their institutional readiness to serve traditionally underserved students. The REL Southeast has helped the partners to identify barriers such as inadequate resources and support services to prepare students for the academic expectations at the post-secondary level, as well as targeted research-based strategies such as institutional programs designed specifically for first-generation students to support the academic success of underserved students. In turn, the information is being incorporated into a self-diagnostic tool which will be used to guide and enhance institutional and programmatic planning and support the implementation of evidence-based practices to increase the academic outcomes of these students. In our most recent coaching session, the REL Southeast shared evidence-based frameworks and models that promote student-ready campuses for underserved student populations. Components of these frameworks range from instituting institutional policies and supports to build intentional and supportive environments that reinforce that every student is known, respected, supported, and valued, to understanding and implementing essential preconditions that enable campus leaders to support student success by leveraging the ecosystem that surrounds them. In addition to gaining insight on research-based models, participants engage in in-depth discussions to inform the format and components of the institutional readiness tool to support underserved students broadly, and for a specific subgroup, in this case, veterans. The REL Southeast also support the partners in thinking through planning and logistics for piloting the tool within and across institutions. Faculty, administrators, and community partners from approximately 15 states participated in the process.
We've talked about how the tool evolved from the post-secondary success at HBCU's partnerships. Can you provide insight into why the institutes and Alcorn were interested in a tool to address institutional readiness for underserved students?
That's a great question. Given the number of barriers underserved students face, including lack of college readiness, it can be challenging for post-secondary institutions to adequately meet the needs of these students to ensure their post-secondary success. Moreover, given that student pre-college academic and background experiences cannot be directly altered by a college, university, faculty, or staff, institutions must identify factors that can be influenced. Over 70% of today's college students possess non-traditional or post-traditional student characteristics, with 44% being over the age of 24, 30% enrolling part-time, 28% having dependents, or 26% working full-time. In addition, a growing proportion of students are from first-generation, low-income, minority, and non-native English-speaking backgrounds. Also, with the advancement of national civil rights of those of diverse sexual orientations, there has been an increase in students who identify with the lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender communities. Historical trends suggest a steady enrollment among diverse student populations, and that higher education institutions have made some efforts to be responsive to the needs of these students. Yet, college completion rates for many underserved student groups continue to lag behind national averages. For example, in 2015, the Lumina Foundation reported that only 20 to 30% of African Americans, Native Americans, and Latinos complete college. Low-income students are also only half as likely as their higher-income peers to earn a bachelor's degree. Evidence clearly suggests that a large percentage of students are not ready for the rigors of post-secondary education. College administrators and faculty alike might desire to identify and enroll better or more college-ready students. However, there is an emerging premise that colleges can be better prepared, that is, student-ready, for today's students regardless of their backgrounds, academic strengths, and challenges.
In addition to sharing research, you mentioned that you also facilitated discussions with partners to support the format of the institutional readiness tool. Will you share a bit about how that tool is structured?
Yes, the self-assessment tool for institutional readiness is an institutional self-diagnostic instrument to allow post-secondary institutions to benchmark current practices against evidence-based norms and best practices to support traditionally underserved students. The tool is grounded in research and has predetermined focus areas and questions to collect, share, and discuss with institutional stakeholders. The tool is also designed to promote reflection on the strengths and challenges in planning for and implementing programs to meet the needs of underserved students broadly and subgroups specifically. There are 3 specific components of the tool: a component to assess institutional readiness using a domain approach, a component for reflection within departments and across the institution, and a component to identify priorities for action planning and continuous improvement. The tool includes an index of institutional readiness, that is, fail, succeed, or excel, by which institutions assess their capacity to meet the needs of underserved students, and is structured as such so that institutions can conduct this assessment on a specific domain or a combination of domains. For example, a department such as Student Services might assess their practices against making excellence inclusive to support student success, while the university's executive committee might propose a self-assessment of all components: students, administration, faculty, staff, and community. Stakeholders can conduct the process without fear of judgment, since results will be evaluated internally in the spirit of self-improvement.
For institutions already engaged in assessing their readiness to meet the needs of underserved students, how might they enhance their process?
Whether a policy or program is being newly implemented or has been implemented for years, a self-assessment diagnostic tool can play a supportive role. The tool we have highlighted today provides evidence-based support for stakeholders as they make a multitude of decisions supporting the needs of underserved students. For example, the tool requires institutions to answer and provide evidence for questions such as: how do campus values support an effort to make the campus ready for students? What institutional policies and practices need to be re-examined and changed to alleviate barriers to student engagement and success? How are institutions preparing all students for the kind of challenges that they may confront in life, work, and citizenship? In terms of thinking about how to make excellence inclusive to support student success, institutions are asked to assess policies and practice and provide evidence for ensuring that the underserved students receive the appropriate services to ensure their success without marginalizing these students. The primary suggestion to institutions who might be assessing their readiness to meet the needs of students is to use the research base to guide their processes. Embedding scoring guide areas within tools can also help guide and support fidelity of implementation. Implementation of a new policy or practice could take a full school year or more to be successful. Therefore, implementation fidelity is critical not only in the planning phase of implementation, but also as it is carried out over a period of time to ensure continuous improvement. When using evidence-based practices, it is critical to consider that generalization may only occur if the practice is carried out with fidelity. This means that consideration is made for institutional practices to ensure alignment with the recommendations from research. Using an annotated bibliography at the end of the tool can help educators focus on the supporting evidence from each area and why it may be important to implement with fidelity.
In general, institutions typically experience changes in leadership, faculty, and staff. How might this affect the self-assessment process?
This is an excellent point. Changes in administration, faculty, and staff can lead to a loss of institutional knowledge of how things work, or how well they work, and important components of implementation. Having new members on the team can help broaden understandings of what may be working well and infuse the process with new ideas for implementation. However, here is where the value of a structured tool cannot be underestimated. A consistent framework of guiding questions and possible sources of evidence provides a level of continuity with the process and an alignment with evidence-based practices.
Thank you for sharing information about how post-secondary institutions can leverage the self-assessment process to increase institutional effectiveness. Are you able to point listeners to additional resources to support the development of similar tools, if interested?
Yes, I would like to encourage our listeners to access and reference the tool that we highlighted today. The National Institutes for Historically Underserved Students is in the process of finalizing the first of what will be a series of tools to assess institutional readiness for underserved students. The Institute plans to broadly disseminate the tools, including posting the tools and accompanying resources on West Virginia University, Parkersburg, and Alcorn State University's websites. Partnering institutions and entities, including the REL Southeast, will also share the tools and resources on their website. The REL Southeast, for example, will post the self-assessment tools along with the annotated bibliographies used to develop the tools on our Post-Secondary Success at HBCU Partnerships Projects page. It is anticipated that the first tool from the series will be available in the summer of 2020. We do hope that our listeners will take a look.
Thank you, Dr. Lampkin, for this helpful discussion on the use of self-assessment tools and providing us with a great example of how these tools are being developed and can be used in post-secondary settings. We hope that listeners have been informed and encouraged to use self-study tools to assess implementation of initiatives within their own institutions to enhance institutional effectiveness.